perfection and trying to be perfect just leads to pain. Life is a series of ups and downs, and we don't follow people because of the virtual certainty of their success or because of their successes. We follow them a lot of times because of their failures and the things that they have overcome and how they've pulled themselves back out, because people love a comeback story.
Welcome back to Mulligan Brothers. Today's video, as always, was sponsored by Huel. I'm drinking Huel Black Edition, which has 26 vitamins and minerals, 35 grams of protein and slow release carbs to make sure that I can stay satiated and proteined up whilst I make these documentaries. If you want to find out more about these, go to the link in the description. I'll talk about them a little bit later on in the video. I want to roll it back to the number 688. You said if you ever wrote a book, that'd be the title of the book, 688. Why is it so significant?
688 days when I lost my first fight. I think I was 12-0, lost my first fight, and then lost the next two fights after that. As soon as I lost that first fight, I immediately went into a downward spiral, athletically, mindset wise. I immediately started blaming other people. I immediately forgot how good I was. And I immediately kind of just shunned myself and hid myself because of the embarrassment and the shame that I had, right? And everybody loses in mixed martial arts. The crazy thing is I look back and I think, man, okay, now I've got 7 more losses since then, and none of them have been any more impactful than that first one. Because life is a series of ups and downs, and we don't follow people because of the virtual certainty of their success or because of their successes. We follow them a lot of times because of their failures and the things that they have overcome and how they've pulled themselves back out, because people love a comeback story. But when you're young and you have that first experience, you don't know how to handle it, right? Especially losing a wrestling match wasn't that big of a deal because there was not a lot of media surrounding it. It was in front of like 500 people at the Hearn Center in Columbia, Missouri. You lose your first fight to Eddie Alvarez and millions of people are watching. You lose the world title. That's a much bigger deal, and people are writing articles about it and tweeting about it and Instagramming about it and all this stuff. It's a bigger thing, and I wasn't ready for that failure. So not that you ever need to think about failure. It's important to focus on success and focus on winning and focusing on the accomplishment, but also building yourself up so that your view and your self-image of yourself is so high that when that bump in the road does happen, it only just is a blip on the radar and it doesn't absolutely tank you. I realized that I was doing all the physical work, all the reps, all the sets, doing more than what was asked of me, but I just took for granted my mindset and my mentality. So then I kind of locked myself away from people, the media, put myself in this little jail cell of self-pity where I was having a little pity party, and I started blaming other people, and I started making excuses, and I got a little bit lazy, and it was just a constant downward spiral. And now, years later, looking back, every time I have a loss or a setback, I realize that action and movement is medicine. Continuing to move forward. It's the same reason why every time I've had a fight, win, lose, or draw on a Saturday, I'm doing some kind of interview on Monday. Lose a fight, go to the Bussing with the Boys, get on there, talk about the loss. Why? Yeah, to be on a platform, but to be an example, to be a shining light, to show people that it's okay to talk about your losses. And here I am, standing confidently on my own 2 feet with a busted up nose and a black eye and a set of stitches and another loss on my record. But here I am. Yeah, I failed, but I failed while daring greatly. And I'm the man in the arena that everybody else watched. And it ends up building more of a fan base and a deeper fan base and a deeper connection with those around you, because everyone is going to suffer losses and everyone's going to suffer failures. But that was all the things that I learned from that first loss. But I didn't quite have enough time to make the requisite adjustments. Lost the next fight after that. And then it got even worse, and then lost my next fight after that. And I went 688 days without winning a fight. I lost 3 fights in a row. So I went from 12-0 to 12-3 and lost 3 fights in a row. And when you're not winning, everything else suffers. Your training suffers, your relationship suffers, your self-image suffers. But it wasn't until after that finally, after that second loss, I finally saw my first sports psychologist and kind of sat down and we just started talking about things, right? Because I didn't want to constantly talk to my wife about it. Didn't want to constantly talk to other people about it. I needed to just kind of sit down and start unpacking things and talking about it and really start taking all the pressure off me, because what I realized is I had spent so much time trying to be perfect when really I just needed to be successful. I spent so much time. I got to the point where leading into that first loss, it was every single sparring session, there's a 5-minute round and I could win 4 minutes and 59 seconds of it. But if I lost that 1 second of it, it was a loss in my mind, when really I won 99.999% of the round, but it felt like a failure to me because I needed to be perfect. So I started putting so much pressure on myself. And now as a 38-year-old, 16-year in the sport, grown man with a wife and 2 kids and the accolades, I realized that failure is just a part of the journey, and I will never be perfect, and perfection and trying to be perfect just leads to pain.
You spoke about mental highlight reels being part of that work that you was doing. Can we paint a mental highlight reel? Maybe one of the first ones you ever did. What did that look like?
So I read that book by Gary Mack called Mind Gym. I forget when it was. I think it was actually in college. So, my mental highlight reel started in college. But I didn't really fully invest in it. It was more something I would make a list and be like, oh, I'll get to that when I need to. Like the reps in the gym are more important. And then later on, now I realize, okay, the reps in the mind gym are so much more important than the reps in the gym. So now it is stuff dating all the way back to high school wrestling, stuff dating all the way back to college wrestling, stuff dating back to my relationship with my wife and first dating her, and in the young years of us in our marriage, and now having 2 boys, and the highlight reels, the highlights of me being a father, and the things that other people say, and the opportunities that I have, and the platforms that I have, and then the performances that I've had in Bellator and then in the UFC, and just going over those things and being completely okay and completely content and not feeling like a narcissist for sitting here and going over the highlights and the things that I've accomplished, because I spent so many years running away from those things because I didn't want to think about those things, because I never wanted to be complacent, when really it's just loving your journey and loving yourself and being okay with not resting on your coattails, not saying, okay, I accomplished that, so I don't need to work anymore, but being genuinely proud of what you've done and what you've accomplished. And just closing your eyes and thinking, yeah, I wasn't supposed to beat that guy. And yeah, they all doubted me here. And yeah, this was a really tough thing to overcome. And yes, this was accomplished, and holy cow, how did that happen? And a lot of it is athletically, and some of it is relationally, and some of it is financially, and some of it is platform, and just reminding yourself exactly who you are.
If you're like me and millions of other people, you probably lead a busy life, and that's where this stuff comes in absolutely clutch. I know that I just scoop, shake, and go, and I'm ready for my day. There are other companies that are trying to do what Huel is trying to do, but they use cheap ingredients. Sometimes it requires you to take 15 pills, or preparing food, trusting supplements with subpar ingredients, and also taking 15 pills a day is just something that we don't all want to do. That's where Huel makes health possible. Black Edition has 40 grams of protein in, 26 vitamins and minerals, and every single ingredient inside this has been carefully selected by Huel's expert team. So you know you're getting the good stuff. Don't just take my word for it. Millions of other people around the world are now using Huel as part of their daily routine. People like Idris Elba, Stephen Bartlett from the Diary of a CEO, Hardest Geezer, the man who ran the entire length of Africa, was using this stuff. If you want to join the movement, go to the link down below where you can get a free t-shirt, a free shaker, and also if you subscribe to Huel, you can get 10% off every single order. This is next freaking level. Go get some.
You spoke about setbacks there. What was the lowest moment in the 688 days? Do you remember?
So it was very interesting too, because, and it was a very, very coincidental that, I had just gotten married. So it's like, me and Bree get married, and I don't even know if I won a fight after we got married. So her first fight she ever went to, I knocked this guy out in like 40 seconds. And she's like, oh, this is easy. This is great. My husband wins fights in 40 seconds and this is easy. Then I might've won one more fight, and then I had my first loss, and it was a 5-round 25-minute knockdown drag out war. My face is all jacked up. I lose to Eddie Alvarez. And then that's when it hit. And she's like, okay, this is what I signed up for. Well, I didn't quite know this is how brutal this sport is. So we had just lost. I had just lost, and I'm able to kind of, whatever, my first loss, no big deal. I changed, but I hadn't changed like I had changed after my second loss. I lose my second fight. And I think it was after my second fight that I lost, that I remember getting done. And we had this little old Spanish style house in San Diego. And we got back from wherever I fought, and we brought the suitcases up the stairs, and we wheel them in, and I just like wheel it into the living room, and I just go sit down on the couch. And then she could tell I was like, because I think it hadn't quite hit me yet until you get to your comfort, right? Like your comfort spot. Like I get done with the fight, I'm at the airport, I'm at the hotel. Don't let it out yet. Get on the plane, fly back, don't let it out yet, you're in public. Then all of a sudden you get to your house where you can close the door, and it's like, okay, this is my spot. And I sat down on the couch and I just started bawling, crying. And then she came up to me and sat next to me, and she starts bawling, crying. And it's just because she sees how hard I work, and she saw the sacrifices that I was making. And it's like, it doesn't really compute that you can work this hard and you can do all the right things, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. It's just the way it is, right? So it feels like injustice. It feels like it's unfair. It feels like, what else can I do? Is this my peak? Did I already hit my peak? Will I never win a fight again? Not to mention the fact, for me, it wasn't even necessarily about the loss of the fight. That's not that big of a deal. I still got my paycheck. I got 2 arms and 2 legs. I'm not injured. Let's keep on fighting. But it was more standing across the altar from her less than a year prior and making a promise to her to have and to hold, and love and sickness, for rich or for poor, and making these promises to take care of her and provide for her. Yet now all of a sudden my career seems like it's going up in smoke. Completely seems like it's crashing and burning right now. So there was all those fears and doubts and insecurities that I was having to deal with. So I think that was because you lose one fight, no big deal, get back on the winning track, you're good, because that was my first experience. In the sport of wrestling, you could lose a wrestling match on Wednesday, but by Saturday, you get another opportunity to go get back into the win column, and maybe you lose 2 in a row, no big deal. The following Tuesday, you get another opportunity, boom, you're back on the winning track. Mixed martial arts, you got 4, 5, 6 months in between fights, and that's a lot of days. It's a lot of practices. It's a lot of self-deprecating thoughts. It's a lot of idleness. It's a lot of self-doubt, And so that was probably the lowest moment. And obviously I didn't do enough work yet, because I lost the next fight after that. And but I think by that time, my first loss was, holy cow, this is a crazy new experience. I don't know how to deal with this. And it carried into my second loss. Second loss was, oh man, something is wrong with me. I need to get something figured out. So then I started doing the work. By the third loss, it almost felt like, hey, I did the work. I'm coming out of this. I'm growing. I'm blossoming. And this is just the way the cookie crumbles in the sport of mixed martial arts. You're going to win, you're going to lose. So I was already on the upward trajectory when I had that third loss. So I was kind of coming out of it, and I was able to deal with that third loss better. Even though now I had my third loss in a row, I was somehow in a better place mentally than I was after the first fight and the second loss.
Wow. Did you have negative self-talk when, the between 1 and 2, like what were you saying to yourself? Like, did you have poor self-image? I know you've spoken about that. Like, what were the kind of things you would say when you looked in the mirror? Like, or what were the kind of things you would think?
Yeah. I mean, I think, and that's what I have talked about in different writings or keynotes or whatever, when I made those mistakes. Like the first biggest mistake I made too was it's like skill amnesia. It's like I completely forgot how good I was. I went from nonstop smashing people 12-0 to immediately lose my first fight. I wake up the next morning and I feel like I've lost all my speed, all my power, all my technique, all my talents, when really I was just as talented after that loss as I was right before the loss. It was just my perception and my mindset of my skill set and how good I was or how good I wasn't, right? So I started having that self-doubt, like, well, and really that's when because I hadn't quite made the transition yet to really starting working on my self-image. And that was when that little guy from that little town who was taught to do little things, who had been so prevalent and so loud in high school and so prevalent and so loud in college, but then he was just kind of taking a nap or almost waiting dormant, almost just sitting there behind a corner, just waiting to pounce and waiting to strike for when I had that first setback, to finally grab his megaphone and say, I told you the media was right. I told you the naysayers were right. I told you you were a flash in the pan. I told you that you weren't supposed to be here. I told you that you've been a fraud and a fake and a phony and you're not this good the entire time. I've been waiting to tell you this. You're not that good. You're not supposed to be a champion. You have been riding this high of this success that you've had. And here we are. Now here's our downward spiral. Come on back to mediocre. Come back to the basement with me. Come back to self-loathing. Come back to self-deprecating thoughts. Come back. You're not supposed to be out there in the light. You're not supposed to be an example. You're not supposed to be a role model. You're not supposed to be a mentor. You're not supposed to be rich and famous and on a platform and all of these different things. Come back here where it's comfortable. Because this jail cell that we sit in, the jail cell of self-loathing and the jail cell of self-pity and the jail cell of mediocre and knowing you aren't even coming close to scratching the surface of your human potential. Yeah, it's painful, and yeah, it's less than you deserve, but it sure is comfortable. Come back here and lay on this dingy little hard, cold cot with me in this jail cell. And that's right where I fell. And luckily, we came out of it. I had the keys in my hand the whole time. That's the beautiful thing. There's a song by NF called Outcast, and he said, woke up, where am I at? I'm in a jail cell, the door's locked, but the keys are in my hand. And that's how the self-image and the self-deprecating thoughts are, is you have the keys in your hand. You just haven't taken the steps necessary to stick that key in the keyhole and unlock that door to go be free from them.
The Charles Oliveira fight's just been announced, but I am curious, what happens if you do fight Conor?
I do believe that I knock him out in the second round. Immediately from the first bell, I meet him in the center, and I immediately start making him second guess himself. He's gonna go downhill, and he's gonna go downhill quick, and I'm gonna see an opening, and I'm gonna get the finish.